I'm sick and tired of hearing about all of the radicals and the perverts and the liberals and the leftists and the communists coming out of the closets. It's time for God's people to come out of the closets, out of the churches, and change America.
I started my channel over a year and a half ago in mid-September 2021. In that time, what have we established? Well, that Christianity is false. Granting that there was a historical Jesus, whoever that man was is lost to us in history, shrouded behind layer upon layer of myth and legend. Like so many figures in the ancient world, he is the son of a high god and a mortal woman. He works typical miracles of the time, healing the sick, raising the dead, turning water into wine, like Asclepius and Dionysus before him. He's exalted to the heavens, made immortal and divine, thereafter appearing to his followers on earth to bestow his blessings, like various demigods from the same general time and region, including Romulus, Asclepius, and Heracles. We rightly recognize this as mythology in every other case from the ancient Mediterranean world. It is the height of desperate and dubious special pleading to suggest that in the case of Jesus alone, it's all really true. Christ was undeniably wrong about the end of the age coming within the lifetime of his own disciples. Apologists have contrived various ways of working themselves out of this pickle, but the plain fact of the matter is the New Testament heralds the second coming as just around the corner, and it never happened. And the final nail in the coffin of this age-old superstition is the simple fact that the biblical God Yahweh does not exist. He is a fictional character in ancient Hebrew legend, a storm god who battles dragons and sea monsters and relishes the smell of burning animal carcasses. There may be some historical kernels of reality in the vaunted pages of the Bible, but anyone with a modicum of sense and rationality, anyone who isn't hell-bent on defending this culturally indoctrinated worldview, can see plainly that this is largely legendary and fictitious material. But here's the thing, I am fine with anyone believing it. Really, truly. It makes no difference to me what anyone else personally thinks or believes, as long as they aren't harming anyone, or imposing such beliefs upon anyone else. And that is where we have a real problem in this country.
The church is supposed to direct the government. The government is not supposed to direct the church. That is not how our founding fathers intended it. And I'm tired of this separation of church and state junk that's not in the Constitution. It was in a stinking letter, and it means nothing like what they say it does.
Anyone who thinks that the United States of America was founded as a Christian nation has a massively distorted view of history. Take, for instance, the Treaty of Tripoli, which was unanimously ratified by the U.S. Senate and signed by President John Adams in 1797. Article 11 states that the government of the United States of America is not, in any sense, founded on the Christian religion. Now, this was a treaty between the U.S. government and Tripoli, a Muslim nation, meant to reassure the Muslims there that the U.S. was a secular state and that religious interests would not interfere with their pact. As such, it is not a founding document, But at the same time, what are the chances that President John Adams and the entire U.S. Senate would endorse a statement that the United States of America is not, in any sense, founded on the Christian religion, if in fact it was founded on the Christian religion? The simple fact of the matter is they declared this not just to allay the Muslims' fears, but because it was fundamentally true. Conservative commentators chide about the phrase separation of church and state not being precisely stated in our founding documents. Yet one only has to read what Thomas Jefferson, the main author of the Declaration of Independence, had to say about the intention of the First Amendment's religion clause. Believing with you that religion is a matter which lies solely between man and his God, that he owes account to none other for his faith or his worship, that the legislative powers of government reach actions only and not opinions, I contemplate with sovereign reverence that act of the whole American people which declared that their legislature should make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, thus building a wall of separation between church and state. Get it? That was the actual intent of the clause, something which logically follows from it. It was absolutely meant to keep church and state separate, because our founding fathers knew that mixing religion and government would prohibit religious freedom, the freedom to practice and believe as one chooses. And you can bet your bippy that that is what they truly wanted. Just read what Jefferson had to say in reference to the Virginia Act for Religious Freedom, the forerunner to the First Amendment's Religion Clause, where the preamble declares that coercion is a departure from the plan of the holy author of our religion. An amendment was proposed by inserting Jesus Christ so that it would read, a departure from the plan of Jesus Christ, the holy author of our religion. The insertion was rejected by the great majority, in proof that they meant to comprehend within the mantle of its protection the Jew and the Gentile, the Christian and Mohammedan, the Hindu and infidel of every denomination. And in case you didn't know, the holy author of their religion was nature's God, the God of deism, not the Bible's God. This was an abstract idea of divinity, wholly separate from Christianity. But nobody was forced to subscribe even to that, as freedom of thought and belief were the main idea. We do have a strong Christian heritage in this country, brought here by our European ancestors. But make no mistake, this is not a Christian nation. This is a free nation. Or at least that's what our founders intended. This was supposed to be a beacon of religious freedom and pluralism. Now we have an entire political movement hell-bent on taking this country back for God, which is historically ignorant. This country was never founded on the Christian faith or Christian God to begin with. But there's a whole swath of idiots in this country who think it is their divine right to establish absolute rule and dominion here, making everyone else second-class citizens, forced to live according to the dictates of their perverted interpretation of Christianity. And that's another thing. This is a perverted interpretation of Christianity. Jesus' message wasn't, G's up, hose down, dollar bill, y'all. His was a message of the first becoming last and the last becoming first, of helping the poor and destitute, seeing wealth, power, and greed as an obstruction to heavenly reward. But beginning in the 1930s and 40s, corporate interests began wedding their message of free market capitalism with Christianity in order to hoodwink the American people into thinking that rugged individualism and Christian faith were somehow the same. One seeks salvation and rises to heaven by their own merits, and likewise do they rise to financial success. In the wake of Roosevelt's New Deal, which sought government regulation of big business after the Depression, industry got in bed with ministers, the most trusted men in America, to launch a full-scale public relations campaign aimed at making the federal government and regulation, those things which were intended to help people, look like the enemy of the people. Government intervention was branded as a violation of freedom under God. In the 1950s, evangelist Billy Graham, a pro-corporate and anti-regulation zealot, helped establish the National Day of Prayer. Graham was instrumental in helping Dwight D. Eisenhower get elected on a campaign of spiritual crusade. In their wake, "Under God" was added to the previously secular Pledge of Allegiance, and "In God We Trust" was added to both postage and paper money, becoming the nation's official motto in 1956. Americans became sold on the idea that not only were we a Christian nation, but we always had been. Fast forward to the 1970s and 80s, televangelism flourishes, and Republican strategists tap the Reverend Jerry Falwell to establish a political movement called the Moral Majority, rallying evangelicals around issues like abortion and homosexuality. Of course, the Bible doesn't actually say anything about abortion, and very little about homosexuality. By and large, evangelicals didn't even oppose abortion prior to the 1980s. It was a non-issue. But Falwell and company brought these matters center stage in the political arena as a strategical distraction from their real issue of concern: the IRS's removal of tax exemption for racially segregated evangelical institutions. Racism and white supremacy were their true motivation. A party built on greed, power, bigotry, and racism has made Jesus their official and ironic mascot. Nothing about his original message matters either to them or to those they pander to. And now here we are in the modern day, with a right-wing party so hell-bent on power that they put a scandalous, corrupt, pathological liar, Donald Trump, at the head of their movement, proclaiming that it was God who put him there.
I don't think he came to be president by mistake or by happenstance. I think somehow God put him in this position.
Nothing about Trump evinces the Christian ethos or character of Christ, but that doesn't matter to them. Power and dominion are all that matter. Trump caters to hatred, division, white supremacy, and Christian nationalism. And this culminated in the seditious act of terror on our nation's capital in 2020, resulting in death and destruction. Democracy itself is now at stake, as this power-hungry coalition of Christian nationalists and white supremacists seek absolute control and domination of our society. In fact, we're barely still a democracy as it is. Most Americans support LGBTQ rights and marriage equality. Most Americans support legalized abortion access. Most Americans support stricter gun laws, but the religious right are doing their damnedest to ensure that that doesn't matter. Through gerrymandering, suppressing voter rights, and stacking the courts in their favor, they are actively seeking to subvert democracy and enforce their own agenda, whether most Americans like it or not. Given the very real and very grave threat at hand, I will be turning more of my attention to Christian nationalism and our precarious political landscape on this channel. It's far too important an issue to ignore. I will continue to cover Christian origins, biblical criticism, and counter-apologetics, but I am expanding my scope by including issues that are immediately relevant to our society. Issues that directly impact our well-being in this country and in this world. I'll be bringing experts and intellectuals to speak on these matters. A few of them are already lined up. So buckle up, because we are about to take this fight where it matters most, to the modern-day holy war that's being inflicted upon us all.
Thank you, divine, omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent Creator God, for filling this chamber with your white light of love. Thank you for allowing the United States of America to be reborn. Thank you for allowing us to get rid of the communists, the globalists, and the traitors within our government. We love you and we thank you. In Christ's holy name we pray. Amen.
If you want to support this channel and what I'm doing, please give me a like and subscribe. Consider joining my Patreon, and of course, check out my online store where there is merch available, everything from t-shirts to coffee mugs to tote bags, and last but not least, online courses that are offered for scholars, everyone from Kip Davis to James Tabor to Dennis MacDonald. This has been Derek Bennett with A Theologica, where religion is fascinating and stupid.